My fingers fell in love before my eyes did. This keyboard is a dream to type on. Let's talk about the Bear 65 V2. Hi everyone, my name is Andy Nguyen. I make accessible content on the wacky world of custom mechanical keyboards. Consider subscribing if you just want to nerd out with me, and it's a judgment-free zone because I personally like cheap stuff. Alice layouts are the ones that are split down the middle and they're angled inward, right? An Arisu layout is that plus arrow keys. The Arisu layout is typically less symmetrical, but this one is pretty aesthetic looking in my opinion. They changed the angle from the top from the first version to make it a little bit more symmetrical looking. I definitely think it was an improvement. Alice and Arisu layouts are very pretty, but I think they're limited by the fact that it's still a one-piece keyboard, so they can't match everyone's shoulder widths. But in terms of true ergonomic benefits, if you actually have wrist pain, I would definitely look toward a split keyboard. You've seen my sound test, you've seen my reviews. I always go through the build quality, the sound, and the feel. But let's just get right to the point today. But before we do that, we gotta answer the dumb questions that people always ask, which is, what about my keyboard? They were gonna ask this versus the Spring. The Spring, I've never had my hands on it, but the sound was very similar to the Jelly Epoch and the Mr. Suit in that they were very PCB foamy, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's definitely not my preference. The Yeti, which is fulfilling soon, which I have actually reviewed, that board was very Fisher Price looking, very fat, kind of chonker on the desk. Although it was a gasket mount keyboard, the sound was very clacky, very poppy, and the feel of the aluminum half play freaking nice. It's really hard to get past the looks. I owned the PC Rukia for a long time. I personally viewed it as an end game. It was a really nice top mount keyboard, but the maker of that board exit scammed everyone and just ran off with people's money. And in terms of regular Alice layouts, a lot of them have very similar issues because of the left side being angled. As the board gets higher, because there's a typing angle, right, it kind of lifts the left spacebar stabilizer a little bit, causing it to tick in a lot of situations. And the Sagittarius that I reviewed recently, I really think that is the epitome of ergonomic keyboard, at least in the one-piece form factor. The angle is very comfortable to type on, accuracy is great, it feels great to use it for a long time, and unfortunately it's kind of aggressive, so your wrists are really turned inward. The sound is very mid. The build quality was also very mid. The PCB, like I mentioned, was grinding on the case, which is affecting the feel. Overall, although I really like the story behind it and I want to support the people who made it, it definitely doesn't hit top marks for me. I think out of all the boards, I would rather go with this layout than a regular Alice layout. So right here you have the arrow keys as well as the delete key, so it's a little bit more balanced from left to right. The left side has 3 artisans and 3 keys, the right side has only 1, and we have this bear right here. A nice little engraving, cute little touch, kind of lean into the weirdness of an Arisu layout. It's already not standard, so having an engraving, not that bad. Unfortunately, that's only the top. The aesthetic of the back, I really don't like this two-tone thing. It really breaks the flow in the design language at the back, but I'm really not looking at the back that frequently, so I don't mind. So, number 1 in aesthetic, but I think the sound falls behind. I think the Yeti, especially with the aluminum half plate and the poppy gasket mount, wins. The sound is just so crisp, clean. So you heard that I mentioned this is V2. I didn't try the V1, but they made some changes from V1 to V2. They changed the top angle a little bit. The right keys over here, the angle is a little bit more aggressive to match the left side, which is good because we really want symmetry in this, because adding arrow keys right here makes it a little bit difficult to be balanced. The regular Alice layout is basically a 60%, so it's kind of cut down the middle, easy to make that balance, but visually you have more weight over here, especially with the delete key and the arrows. So making the angle actually match a little bit better was a solid improvement. I personally really like the delete key in the top right because it's where I expect the delete key to be. Without having a dedicated key, I typically would have to layer backspace to be delete. That takes a lot of time. I would have a split backspace right here and use the right space to be a function, hold function, hit that to delete. So having it dedicated is solid. In the V2, they also reduced the front height to 19 millimeters. That isn't wasted because you see these rubber strips for the feet. They don't pop out from the board a lot, so it keeps the final effective front height pretty low. The leaf spring mount definitely felt comfy to type on. It's not as stiff as the top mount. I did use PCB foam in this build, so it's not gonna be the most flexible. I think it feels pretty balanced. I can push into it a little bit, and it feels very comfy. You're not gonna have extreme flex like a plateless keyboard like the Thera 75. We gotta talk about the sound of this keyboard, right? The Bear 65 V1 really sounded hollow. That was definitely the weakness of the board. In the V2, it was definitely reduced, especially since I built it with PCB foam, but it was still hollow. Luckily, we have force brake technologies. and the hollowness was completely removed. The stock sound, even with loop switches and PCB foam, was okay, but with the force break mod, it sounded above average. Not top tier, not S tier, but really solid, usable. There's no weird spacebar, there's no weird pinging. The left spacebar was solid, wasn't ticking. I could actually enjoy the keyboard. And the switches I used are just KS3 Pro yellows, which are basically modern versions of Gateron yellows, which are just an old switch. Nothing fancy here, not a Zaku, not a Tangy, just a regular old Gateron yellow. And I honestly think the old switches are fine. There's nothing really wrong with them. You don't need to buy switches every week, every time a vendor releases them. Just enjoy what you have. I still use Gateron inks like I did day one, and I'm totally happy. With the aluminum plate leaf spring mount, the sound was solid, but do you always need every single keyboard to have the best sound ever? I don't think so. So I proceeded to daily this keyboard for the next week or two. In terms of using it for gaming, easy. I'm an FPS gamer, so I play Apex, I play Valorant, I play a lot of Overwatch 2 beta right now. I don't play League of Legends, I don't play World of Warcraft, so I don't need more keys. If you were to have to reach all of the num row or need F row, you're gonna have a hard time with any of these layouts. So 65, 60, Alice, especially Alice if you use the thumb to hit C, V, and B. If you want to see me game with customs, go ahead and check out my Twitch channel. I stream mostly over there these days, maybe after build streams. Check it out in the link in the description below. And in terms of work, I definitely can use an Alice for work as well. For my office job, unfortunately, I have to use a lot of F keys now, so I have to use a TKL. I use this for the first week, but once I get into the design, I'm gonna have to switch over to a TKL. Video editing is a little bit more manageable because I like having a dedicated delete key. It's not the best, it's doable if I just want to keep one keyboard on my desk, but Alice layouts are kind of like a fun keyboard. You can use them for every day, but you're gonna have to make some compromises. Not having dedicated home and page up, page down may be a deal breaker for you. And I'm doing something a little bit different today. I took some questions from the patron community. If you want to consider being a patron, you get a dedicated channel for just patrons where you get access to me all times of the day and troll me, like these pictures that you see right here. That happened right before I was filming this. But first question comes from Estricos. This or Vega? Listen here, you little cub. Vega is a gasket AF keyboard. It's very deep and all you hear is gasket. They're completely different keyboards. This keyboard is a little bit drier, but don't you dare ask me that freaking question again. Ken asks, how does it compare to the Mr. Suit and Jelly Epoch? Like I said before, the PE foam is going to drive the sound of those boards. This one is kind of in the middle, not too deep, not too clocky. The feel of this I like more than those boards because those are uber flexible. This one is a little bit more balanced. Cobb asked, will a Thok like a KBD67 Lite? The KBD67 Lite is a Thok monster, big booty Thok, big dump truck Thok, and you really can't keep up with that, especially for the price. That silicone mid layer kind of drives that, and plastic keyboards never did us wrong. Brian asked, if I want to try Alice but I've never tried an Alice keyboard before, would you suggest this one? I personally wouldn't because you're entering a group buy and it's a little bit expensive, $399 plus shipping, and you don't know if you're gonna like the keyboard yet. I would consider getting an acrylic Alice or an acrylic Arisu. There's a few options on the market, Switch Couture, AV3, those are things I'm thinking about. You can save a lot of money that way, and if you end up not liking it, you can sell it off, and it's gonna be easier to sell something much cheaper than to kind of commit to aluminum Alice or Arisu layout and try to sell that. Worst comes to worst, you can't sell it. You're only out about 200 bucks rather than 400 plus. The Alice layout and the Arisu layout aren't for everyone. Some people really don't like the curve. It's definitely a preference thing, and you may end up never liking it. At the end of the day, this is not the best sounding keyboard, but I really like the balance of kind of like minimal, lean look on the desk versus like the Sagittarius or the Yeti, and the Bear is cute. I'm really into these quirky things, especially with this quirky layout. So aesthetics are on point, but is it the most ergonomic keyboard? I don't think so. I think that still goes to the Sagittarius, at least for the one-piece keyboards. I actually prefer Alice and Arisu layouts because they're a little bit more fun. I like the aesthetic of these aluminum keyboards and these one pieces more than the splits. And you should know my bias by now. I really like when the front heights of the keyboards are lowered. It's more comfortable for my hands. I definitely don't like using wrist rests. A lot of ergonomic or Alice or Arisu layouts, in the group buy, it comes with the option to buy a matching wrist rest. You can do that. I typically don't because the Alice and Arisu layouts already take up so much space. I don't want it to take up more space. This video is not sponsored, but I get to keep this keyboard, so you get to see it more often. I really like it. I really enjoy it. I'm willing to daily if I don't have to do a lot of design work for my job, and I'm willing to game with it. Gaming on it is really fun. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. This keyboard is just one of the many. There's tons of options, even pre-built options coming out. Don't feel pressure to buy an aluminum group buy board if you don't want to shell out the dough. But if you know you already like Alice, you know you like Arisu layouts, and you know you like the cute bear, yeah, go for it. I'm not gonna stop you. Thanks for watching. Thank you for all the channel supporters. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.